Welcome to the third story of the First Light series, an original science fiction short story compilation written and narrated by Scott McGowan. The following story contains depictions of graphic violence and gore, including animal attacks, combat violence, and disturbing imagery. These episodes should not be redistributed without express permission. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Finders Keepers. Chapter 1. Lucky. The communication came from an unknown number. Private, it read. Reuben ignored it. He knew better than to answer calls from anyone other than his contacts. As it stood, that list was two names, the Guild and Victoria. He also wouldn't have been able to answer it at that moment, his left hand holding the gauze, and his right coated in a thick tissue repair gel which was doing an excellent job of locating the small cuts on his fingers. The gash on his calf had mostly stopped bleeding, thanks to Victoria's bandana, and he made sure to clean it with an alcohol solution before applying the gel, which burned as it met his open skin, and he quickly coated the wound while clenching his teeth. His muscles spasmed as though they were trying to escape from the foreign substance, but the gel worked quickly, bonding to his olive skin and pulling it into a tight seal. The leg looked more like a leg again, albeit one that had been mauled. He couldn't stand on it yet, and he resolved that when he could, he would kick himself for his stupidity when his pod vibrated again. A simple animation of what he knew was called a telephone played over top of the caller's name. Private.
2 calls in 2 minutes?
He thought.
They must have the wrong number.
He left it alone. Then it came through again. Amazed at the persistence, he answered.
Reuben Montgomery,
he stated flatly, hoping the person on the other end would realize their mistake and leave him alone. He was disappointed to hear the response.
That's who I'm looking for.
He sighed and looked over his grisly handiwork.
If this isn't an emergency, I'm gonna have to ask you to call me back in about 10 minutes.
He knew he was being blunt, but the adrenaline was wearing off, and creeping in to replace it was a rather unpleasant throbbing sensation that seemed to worsen with each heartbeat.
If I have to call back in 10 minutes, I'm going to call someone else,
the voice replied. There was no malice in it, merely a statement of intent, but the speaker held an air of brusqueness that only came with authority. Reuben recognized it could be someone of significance. He attempted to soften his demeanor.
My apologies, I'm a bit indisposed at the moment.
He started to wrap the gauze around the wound and, upon a jolt of pain running up his whole body, suddenly understood that he didn't actually know how to do that.
I know.
The audio modulated for a few seconds, causing the stranger's vocal timbre to rise and fall like a worn magnetic tape.
Those wolves are sly, aren't they?
Reuben froze. The animals the stranger referred to weren't wolves, not in the old Earth sense, but the creatures he and Victoria had encountered, and handled, mostly through her efforts, were a close enough analog to the historical beasts that most hunters just called them that. They were more of an ambush predator than their namesake, a fact Reuben was now dealing with the consequences of. But this person couldn't have known that, unless they had access to the guild logs from that excursion.
We knew we were being stalked, sir. We were, unfortunately, inaccurate in our assessment of how many were stalking us.
A chuckle came from the other end, short and humorless.
Yes, I read the report. You're lucky to be alive.
He saw Victoria kneeling over him, her rifle finding its target with ruthless efficiency, beams soaring through the air and leaving a faint, familiar smell of burning ozone in their wake. 1, 2, 3 shots in 3 directions before she turned her attention to him, locking eyes to monitor for consciousness as she hastily dressed his mangled limb.
Luck had nothing to do with it, sir.
Well, consider yourself lucky now. I need you for an assignment.
Reuben stared at his leg blankly for a few seconds.
You'll have to pardon my disbelief, sir,
he said with a suitably subordinate level of sardonicism. That got a genuine laugh.
I empathize. I felt the same way when Victoria told me she wouldn't take the job without you.
He wasn't sure how to handle this revelation. On the one hand, he thought it was sweet of her, looking out for him like that. On the other hand, was she nuts?
I am in need of her particular skill set. She insisted the two of you are a package deal. So now, I'm talking to you.
The stranger spoke with deliberation and a rare clarity. Whoever he was well practiced at conversation.
I'm flattered, sir. To whom do I owe the pleasure of this call?
The voice did not hesitate.
I'm afraid I can't say.
Reuben felt a twinge of annoyance, and the mask of formality dropped.
Really? You can't tell me a name? Not even make one up?
I would prefer we be nothing but honest with each other. Unfortunately, my identity is something of a high security matter, and I have no intention of disclosing that information over an unsecured network.
He explained that he was not interested in working for someone who refused to identify himself, but the man on the line insisted that they discuss details in person, telling Reuben to meet him at the train station directly outside the Sciences Wing in 45 minutes. He was initially hesitant to agree, but the idea of continuing to sit in his apartment and having the image of a wolf locking its jaws around him playing on repeat in his mind did not appeal to him. Plus, it would be a quick trip, minus the extra time walking on a bad leg, and the meeting would be in a public place. If this was a scam, it was not an obvious one, and he felt confident that if both he and Victoria were present for the meeting, that they would not be at risk of getting held up. He briefly imagined a scenario where someone would attempt to mug her, only to be met with a level of violence most would not anticipate could be contained in someone her size. It made him smile.
All right, I'll be there.
Given the possibility of the voice belonging to a high command officer, he deliberately chose the robes he had worn to his commissioning. They were a comfortable but sleek blend of Nova textile and synthetic cotton in colony colors, black with sky blue highlights, and the skirt piece reached his ankles, hiding his mess of a left calf muscle. Now that he couldn't see it, he felt a little lighter. The pain was still there, but it felt easier to manage without the visual to amplify it. Shifting his weight to his good leg, he undid the clasp holding the tight bun on his head together, and his auburn hair fell haphazardly onto his shoulders. He was going to have to take some extra time to fix it, but he wanted to show some effort in his appearance. He found the typical hunter attitude of wearing the same outfit for everything distasteful. The ubiquity of hard-light armor reduced choice of uniform almost entirely to personal taste rather than function, and most working hunters would opt for comfortable, less restricting outfits. Victoria was a fascinating exception. She often expressed a level of distrust in her shields, saying once that, "The day I come to rely on it is going to be the day it fails on me." Her closet was relentlessly tactical, with one nice outfit by Reuben's standard: a black formal shirt with a lighter shade of black blazer and suit pants. He had never seen her wear it, even after encouraging her to do so, though that didn't stop him from visualizing what she would look like in something other than camo and compression leggings. He saw her again, crouched over him, and the memory jumped backwards to the moment he felt teeth meet skin. He had seen a flash, his shields failing under the strain of the bite, and then another as his nervous system exploded. He knew he was screaming, but his brain blocked out the noise, and hammering at the beast's skull with the butt of his saber did nothing to release its grip on him. He lost his balance and saw the forest floor start to run away from him, fallen branches and upturned stones catching on his clothes and tearing holes in the fabric. He remembered coming to the realization that he was about to die, and all he could think about was that he hoped he wouldn't have to watch it happen. He slapped himself in the face, and the pain brought him out of the memory. After some gentle coercion, his hair settled neatly behind him, and he further convinced it to stay there with the addition of a traditional shipwright's cap. It would make a good impression on HC, and it matched the outfit, before downing a painkiller with a cold cup of leftover coffee and leaving for the train. Chapter 2. End of the Rainbow. She noticed her index finger rapidly tapping without her input, and she took a deeper breath in, focusing her awareness on the unruly muscles and allowing herself to breathe out the tension. It was a technique she learned during her studies, and while she knew the actual physiological response was not exactly as it was described to her, it reliably produced the desired result. To be free on stage meant to move without strain, without tension, to present oneself as a blank canvas. It was upon this canvas that Victoria was presenting the image of a woman unperturbed by her circumstances. It was an act, mostly for Ruben's benefit, though the train had not arrived yet at his station. She needed some time to step into character, as it were. The situation did not sit right with her. She had done contract work before and had no qualms with it, but she made sure to vet prospective employers before accepting work and would drop them if they asked her to perform anything outside of the law. She wouldn't usually humor anonymity from a client, but they were adamant that she was the only person for the job, and the pay would be worth her trouble. She was not hurting for ore. She was regimented in her finances, often purchasing only essentials for long periods in order to give herself headroom to upgrade her hunting gear. But the sting of failure was still raw from the last hunt. Filing that report had felt like sticking her face in a bone wasp nest. Failed recovery, medical casualty, having to argue the necessity of discharging her weapon. It was us or them, she wrote, and better 3 dead wolves than 2 dead hunters.
Well, 1 dead hunter.
The thought crept up in her. She had seen death, and while she knew one day hers would arrive, it wouldn't come without a fight. A bubbling of pride rose up in her at the notion, and she calmed it as the train came to a gentle stop, the airlock doors opening for the 10 or so new passengers to embark and 2 to leave. One of the latter had been standing in the doorway as it opened, making it awkward for Ruben to limp past them as the 2 of them attempted to navigate the same space in opposite directions. Victoria met his eyes, and he raised his brows while motioning to the interloper, the wordless message of, "Can you believe that guy?" written plainly on his expression. She smiled at him, mildly, indicating that it was funny, but not that funny. He returned her kindness with a smile of his own. His smiles always reached his eyes. It was a level of sincerity she didn't feel comfortable mirroring.
How's your leg?
She asked. Ruben responded by lifting the hem of his skirt up to show her the damage. She cringed as she saw that the wound was uncovered. In better shape than before, sure, but still. And she reprimanded him.
I couldn't figure it out in time,
he explained. Victoria assured him that if he had spent less time picking out an outfit and fussing with his hair, he probably would have been able to suss out how to wrap a cloth around his leg. He laughed, even though she was not joking.
It's fine. The gel's doing its job.
She had noticed his limp on the way in.
I'm sorry you had to walk on it. I didn't know this guy was going to ask us to meet him so soon.
It's fine. I've got a cane in my cache if I need it.
He leaned against one of the handholds running from the floor to the ceiling and declined Victoria's insistence that he sit down, opting instead to shift his weight to his right leg.
I've got to say, after today, I wasn't expecting you to want me to tag along.
She didn't follow her initial impulse to respond and chose her words carefully.
You need the experience.
He stopped smiling. Maybe she had chosen poorly, she thought, but after a few seconds of silence, he nodded as if he understood. They didn't speak to each other for the remainder of the trip. Sciences was closer to the rear of the colony, just under 20 minutes without stops, and it was a quieter time of day. Victoria always found it odd, having been born in transit, the insistence on maintaining the 24-hour day cycle from old Earth. It forced her to develop a consistent sleep regimen to adhere to what she found to be an unnatural rhythm. She would use that to her advantage on occasion, shifting her circadian clock a few hours earlier than other hunters in order to get first pick at contracts. The last job had been one of these, and the weight of what she had gone through to get it was heavier now that it hadn't gone as she had hoped. But she did not let herself fully carry that load. She would have to deal with it later, when this job was done. The pristine white walls of the science division came into view through the train windows. Even the station, despite not falling under their operations budget, was held to a high standard of cleanliness. Teams of white-robed people could be seen scouring the walls with handheld sanitization devices, and as Victoria and Ruben exited onto the platform, a friendly young man offered one of these to them. It was a thick, sleek wand with a bright yellow hard light disc mounted on an adjustable head, similar to the kind of device Victoria had at home, and they used it to clean their shoes. She recalled the urgent notice about a novel bacteria from a few weeks ago. One of her other hunting partners, Bill, had fallen terribly ill from it. and the annoyance of having to take these measures quickly melted. Humanity was not quite used to the planet yet, and vice versa. She had been given instructions on where to meet their prospective employer, and following them led the two of them not into the towering, sun-gleamed building that waited outside the station, but down a walkway that followed the perimeter of its outer courtyard. The white stone walls were so bright that they were hard to look at, and so they kept their eyes opposite, taking in the expansive vista of open space through the ship windows. The central star for this system was smaller and brighter than old Earth's sun, and the windows had needed their refractive index adjusted in order to compensate. As a result, when the ship was in the right position, the sunlight would disperse into a vivid rainbow of colors, a happy accident that led to many new developments, like sciences, to paint their buildings white in order to capitalize on the occasional majesty. This was not one of those times, and Victoria had to squint to fight off a budding ocular migraine until they reached the edge of the courtyard wall and found themselves among a closely packed set of gray, windowless structures, all of them hard-edged and rectangular and only a few stories tall. They cast long shadows on the alleyways between them, and Victoria suddenly wished she had asked a few more people to come along.
Stay close to me,
She commanded, and Reuben did so. Despite the clear absence of any other people on the walkways, the air felt tense, and she felt as though there was someone, or something, lurking behind them as they navigated according to the stranger's instructions. She took note of the lack of security cameras, typically posted at intersections in residential districts, and wondered if this had been an older development that hadn't been updated. Before she could explore the idea, her pod vibrated, and a message displayed on its screen. "Stop there. I'll come out." She stopped abruptly, causing Reuben to bump into her, whispering an apology as he looked around. They were in the middle of two convergent walkways, leaving them open on all sides, and they kept their backs to one another in order to keep an eye out for their patron. Victoria's hand hovered over her right thigh, just above where the hidden holster was on that side, in the event that they were about to get jumped. She wouldn't have time to use her pod, and a handgun was better than no weapon at all. She did not blink, only shifted her view from the one street to the other. A noise. Her fingers twitched. She cursed under her breath at the movement.
Not yet.
She thought.
Not until you see a weapon.
Reuben didn't seem to hear it, but it came from his side.
Swap,
She told him, and they quickly changed places. Another noise, louder this time, from her left. Her eyes darted to the source and saw a figure in the shadows. She did not move. It did. Slowly. She watched it approach them, its massive eyes catching stray sunbeams and reflecting a white glow. And she saw that its head was similarly large and bulbous, and she felt her fingers twitch again.
breathe.
1, 2, 3 seconds. It was getting closer.
And out.
1, 2, 3 seconds. It stopped, a few feet away from her, and she saw it had hands like hers. Human hands. She noticed the tension in her shoulders and let her breath melt away. Straightening herself up, she gave Reuben a nudge with her elbow, letting him know their contact had arrived. "It's a pleasure to meet you in person," the figure spoke, and his voice was smooth and jovial. He put his hand to his chest and offered them a small bow. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Dr. Emery. You may call me M." Chapter 3. Charmer. M's outfit was striking in its complexity. A large round hat added a full 12 inches of height to his silhouette, and its deep red velvet sheen and gold adornments conjured images of an ancient Shah's crown. Lengths of chain seemed to defy gravity as they formed short, unmoving waves on the hat's surface. He was wearing goggles, too large, Reuben thought, to be standard-issue safety goggles, that were highly reflective, every stray beam of light serving to mask and block eye contact. His lithe frame was contrasted sharply by his wide-shouldered jacket, a piece that matched his headgear impeccably down to the lengths of gold chain, buttoned up to just below his sternum to give a glimpse of the midnight blue silk layer underneath. His shoes were the most lavish of all, almost comical in their size, giving his feet the appearance of being a magnitude larger than they ought to be, and pointed upwards at the ends. His voice was much richer when unaffected by the pod network. It suited his meticulous garb. He was almost enchanting in his speech, oozing the level of confidence that entire countries went to war for. I sincerely thank you for coming all this way to meet with me. I understand it was an unusual request, but I assure you that you are safe. He gestured widely at the empty streets. We are completely alone. Reuben was too impressed by the outfit to pay much attention to what he was saying, but he nodded as if to agree. He stared in awe at the hat, marveling at the craftsmanship that was clearly required, and every time M's head moved and the chains did not, his fascination grew. Victoria was straight to the point, as always.
Why did you bring us here?
The doctor flashed a toothy grin, and Victoria took notice of his prominent canines. He reminded them of the security risk inherent in his communications with them and pointed out what she had noticed previously. There were no cameras here. This district was the original sciences complex, he explained, and we've had an agreement since our formation that there would be no guard presence here, surveillance or otherwise. Since the completion of the Argent Tower, these buildings have sat unused.
Perfect place for a secret meeting.
Victoria stated.
Or a murder.
The words snapped Reuben out of his trance. He accidentally shifted his weight onto his bad leg, causing a sharp bolt of pain to run up his left side. He gasped and instinctively grabbed Victoria's shoulder to steady himself, wincing. She barely flinched. M's smile disappeared. I would do no such thing! With slow, clear movements of his hands, he triggered the unlocking mechanism on his pod, the new steel construct sliding off his forearm. He carefully placed it on the ground in front of him, between the three of them, and then stuck a finger in each of the arms of his jacket and shook it. Nothing up my sleeve, see?
Good.
Reuben felt Victoria's shoulders relax. He clued into the physical contact between them and adjusted himself so he could let go. She still didn't seem to care.
What's the job?
Something very important of mine has been stolen from me, the man continued, placing both hands behind his back. The thieves have demanded a ransom. I have no intention of paying them for their work.
So you want us to kill them?
Not at all! M was almost indignant at the idea. This is a recovery mission, nothing more. Something wasn't right. The man he had spoken to on the call had left no question answered. This was too straightforward for that level of obscurity.
Sir, if I may.
He began, and M's attention turned to him.
I remember you said you needed Victoria's skill set. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate.
Then I must apologize.
He struggled to find the words.
I fail to see why you need her, specifically if this is just a recovery mission.
He could feel the words getting harder to say with every syllable.
Sir.
Stop that.
Victoria told him before returning to the conversation.
He has a point. What aren't you telling us?
There was that toothy grin again. See, this is why I knew you were a good fit. You're observant. He took a hand out from behind him to raise his goggles off of his eyes. Compared to the rest of him, his face was almost unsettlingly plain. The thing they have taken from me is going to require some convincing.
You keep doing that.
She sounded like she was getting tired of the discussion.
If you're going to be vague about it, we're walking. Just tell us where we need to go and what we need to do.
Reuben was mortified, but in spite of the clear disrespect, the doctor obliged. He explained that he was part of a development team in the field of artificial intelligence and robotics, with their main focus on embodied intelligences that could perform tasks deemed unsafe or unsavory for humans. They were on the verge of a breakthrough, with a prototype unit showing great promise, when they suddenly lost communication with it planetside on what was supposed to be a test mission.
What was the mission, if I may ask?
Reuben cut in. We wanted to see if it could learn to swim. He wasn't sure it was a joke. After a few days of searching, they were sure it had been lost, until a communication came through from an unknown sender. They were demanding payment not in ore, but in gold, and it would have been enough to destabilize the colony's reserve. Victoria found that strange.
What would they want with gold?
Who knows? They're thieves, he growled in exasperation. I wouldn't be able to pay them off even if I wanted to, the conniving little... Victoria nodded as she considered the information.
You're sure you don't want us to kill them?
That got a laugh out of the man. Yes, I'm sure. He cleared his throat. I just want her back. Did he hear that correctly? Reuben ran over the last few seconds in his mind. Her? As for the convincing, the doctor continued, this prototype is complex. It is still developing, even now, without our intervention. Not only will you need to recover it from the bandits, but you will likely need to convince it to return with you.
Convince?
It was as though he were referring to a moody teenager. Was this thing sentient? Was that even possible? He looked to Victoria for assurance that he was not alone in his thoughts. She seemed as confused as he was.
Is it armed?
It has access to weapons, yes. M seemed to dodge the question. For self-preservation.
And you think I can convince it?
That was another sticking point. Convincing was not a word he would use to describe her. Commandeering, sure. The doctor minced no words. You are Faitūra. Just standing next to her, Reuben could feel Victoria's body stiffen. It was as though that word activated something in her, an identifier far deeper than any mask she wore. Even he knew what it meant. She started to speak through clenched teeth.
You.
Do not misunderstand. M raised his hands in protest. That is why I need you. This intelligence is based on a pre-existing model, a consciousness mapping from one of our researchers. Whatever facial expression he had been wearing softened. She was Faitūra also. Reuben waited to see what she would do. He dared not speak. He had been on the receiving end of this before, exactly once. Her facial expression did not change, but she shifted her weight backwards as if to look down on the doctor.
Half up front, plus transport. I have a contact.
Of course.
Give me the coordinates in the transfer message. Encrypt it with a one-time code. The code should be Shakespeare.
M picked his pod up from the ground and reattached it to his forearm. He ran the encryption protocol with a few button presses. It is sent.
You look like an alien.
Victoria said bluntly. Reuben had to interrupt.
You don't know a thing about fashion.
Chapter 4. Unsweet.
For what it's worth, I think it was out of line.
Victoria's expression didn't change, but she turned her head slightly away from him, shifting her focus to the rapidly passing architecture. The train was much more populated now, mostly people in long white coats, the early shift at Sciences. She wondered if they ever wore other clothes, or if it just made sense to keep it on all the time. She felt the impulse to yawn and quashed it.
I need coffee.
We could stop at my place for a minute. I should change anyway.
Reuben was clearly trying to keep the mood light, but he stupidly kept coming back to the same thing.
You doing okay?
I need you to shut up about it.
It stopped him cold. She knew it was going to hurt, but it was effective. He didn't mention it again. Reuben's apartment was always clean. It was small, just a one-bedroom with a kitchen, but clever design allowed him to stash most of his possessions behind a cabinet door. She sometimes got the impression he didn't actually own anything, and then she'd see inside his closet. She lingered in the kitchen to give him some privacy as he dutifully searched his collection for something suitable to go planetside. He made good coffee. It was strong, but not unpleasant, and she found that she preferred it to the stuff that came out of the vendor outside the guild. The flavor was more palatable, lacking the metallic taste of the cans, and she liked hers without any sweetener. As she drank, she could hear Reuben swearing in the other room. She asked if he was all right.
Yeah, I just can't wear pants.
He groaned in pain.
It's gripping around my leg.
She put her coffee down on the kitchen island.
I'm coming in,
she said, and waited for the go-ahead. He reluctantly agreed, and she entered his bedroom to find him half-dressed, a pair of black trousers haphazardly pulled up around his left ankle. His face was red with embarrassment.
You idiot,
she said, and as she kneeled down in front of him, she queued up a first aid kit from her pod cache.
You need to wrap it first. Of course it's going to hurt.
They were both silent as she worked. He shuddered when she applied the alcohol-soaked cloth on the wound site, so she held his leg still with her other hand. After sanitizing, she checked for any physical obstructions, and finding none, she gently wrapped gauze around his calf, applying enough pressure to provide stability but not to cause too much pain. She moved with clinical familiarity, stopping when he expressed discomfort before gradually returning to pace, and before long the wound had been fully covered.
It's still going to hurt a bit, just be careful.
She recalled the kit to her cache and stood up.
Vic,
Reuben said, clearly upset.
I'm really sorry.
She locked eyes with him, and he turned away, his face to the floor. She never quite knew how to act around people in their vulnerability, but she knew enough to not say something to make it worse. She took a deep breath, let it flow out of her, and then softened her voice, saying,
Just be careful, okay?
He nodded. She used the time he spent getting ready to take inventory, scrolling past the standard guild-issue equipment to her custom hard-light rifle, one of the few weapons she only had one of, the other being a discontinued photon cannon, and ensuring the ammunition core was fully charged. On her person and covert hip holsters were 2 silenced handguns. She had taken them to a black market light forger who modified their photon cores to glow in a color outside the visible spectrum, making them essentially invisible from a distance. It was worth the cost, she thought, to know she would never be caught without a weapon, even if her pod was damaged, or if the guild blacklisted her. Reuben came out of his room, dressed in a loose-fitting brown tunic and black pants. His hair was pulled back into a low ponytail. He looked sensible. Victoria finished her coffee, and the two of them left to meet her contact, a private teleporter operator whom she had done business with before, and she knew to be discreet. His workshop was a short train ride and a 5-minute walk away.
So we're just gonna go straight in there?
Reuben asked, attempting to keep his voice under the collective din of conversations around them.
No surveillance, just guns blazing, grab the thing and get out.
You heard what he said. He wants it back.
The train pulled into her station, the airlock doors creating a pressure zone that was almost ushering them out.
He wants her back,
he specified, with a bit of a chuckle. Victoria didn't find it amusing.
People personify their possessions. It's not uncommon.
Stepping out onto the platform, she took note of the time on one of the digital billboards. It was getting to be early evening. No wonder she felt tired. Hoping the coffee would kick in soon, she added,
Every ship used to be a woman.
Reuben smirked and put on an old man voice, saying,
And if you work hard and save your money, one day you'll own a woman of your very own.
It was a dumb joke, but it worked. Victoria smiled. Chapter 5. The Round. In the 15 or so years before the first construction payload had been launched for the massive planet-side facility known as Siren Base, colony divisions would lay claim to land areas they found strategically useful, often breaking ground before approval had been received. In the rush to establish a foothold on the planet, many terraforming protocols were ignored, and building projects either had to be retroactively approved, rolled back, or written off and abandoned. This was one of the latter projects. A sprawling, city-sized residential complex had been planned atop a mesa in one of the temperate zones. The proposal sang the praises of its stunning vistas, self-sufficiency, and high walkability score. It was to be the development division's shining accomplishment. It wasn't until they had bored tunnels under the majority of the southern end of the plateau that the laborers began to act strangely. People would complain about the noise of the machinery or the brightness of the work lights. Large slabs of polished stone, some the size of a freight-class transport and meant for foundational sewer infrastructure, began to go missing from the worksite, followed soon after by the workers themselves. The proposal was denied, and the mesa declared uninhabitable. All the equipment had to be left behind, as did many of the bodies, deemed unrecoverable by sciences. It was at the mouth of this tunnel system that Reuben and Victoria now found themselves. The first thing he noticed was the abundance of plant life. The mouth of the tunnel was lined with a heavy blanket of moss, and tall, soft grasses flowed inwards as far as the sunlight could reach. Dandelion-like flowers were scattered throughout, competing only with the seemingly ubiquitous bright blue fungus caps for space. Ankle-height bushes dotted with bright pink berries formed a de facto fence around what had clearly once been the tunnel staging area, a wide funnel of tamed nature leading to the dark chasm that awaited them. The waning sunlight gave everything a majestic wash of gold, and Reuben wondered if colors like this had existed on old Earth.
Let's go.
Her command snapped him out of the daydream. It was time to work. At first, the light from outside was enough to navigate, but as the tunnel split into two directions, the darkness grew more potent. Victoria's rifle cast a dim magenta hue along the walls, but as they kept more towards the center of the tunnel walkways, it was not enough to perceive their surroundings. Their steps grew more rigid and synchronized the further in they went. Reuben did not dare stray too far from her for the same reason why neither of them had brought headlamps. They didn't know who might be waiting for them, and such a bright light in the darkness was an easy target. Even the rifle was a risk factor, but she clearly thought it necessary. The only sounds they could hear were their own. Their soft footsteps reverberated gently up the rough stone walls, and Reuben felt himself unconsciously matching Victoria's measured breaths. Every 20 meters or so, she would abruptly stop, and while he was initially caught off guard, by the fourth time he settled into the touch-and-go rhythm. He knew he couldn't see anything, but he kept looking around as if he could develop night vision through willpower alone. The tunnels never narrowed, and without any other landmarks, he was finding it difficult to discern one section of darkness from another. She stopped, earlier than usual, he thought. He watched her closely, waiting for the signal to keep moving. It didn't come. She was raising her rifle scope to her eye level. Her voice was terse, nearly silent.
Light him up.
With a practiced urgency, Reuben brought his pod up to his face and navigated through the touchscreen menus. Text, single, element, fire, flare. A surge of photonic energy manifested in the palm of his right hand, taking the shape of a dim red orb of light. With an effort, he tossed it in an overhead arc ahead of them, and the orb's brightness grew in intensity as it sailed through the air like a stone before coming to rest on the tunnel floor, illuminating the feet and legs of a human-like shape. The rifle discharged without hesitation, the beam finding its target in a fraction of a second, effortlessly penetrating the torso and exploding outward, scattering fragments of a long, decayed thoracic cage in a 2-meter radius. They were, thankfully, out of the range of the blast, but the acrid odor of burnt remains permeated the tunnel, and Reuben fought the urge to vomit. Victoria showed no such reaction.
I thought I told you to set up gesture control.
She calmly lowered her weapon and approached what was left of the skeleton, propped up by a scaffolding pipe in the center of the path.
You can't keep menu diving. You need to be faster.
Whoever they were, this had not been the place they died. Scraps of rope kept the body upright, and its feet had been manipulated so that it appeared to be levitating off the ground. Tied to each bony hand was a human skull, and one arm was raised higher than the other. Below the gruesome scene was a scrap of wood upon which someone had written, "Justice will be served."
We're on the right track.
She pressed forward down the tunnel. Reuben followed, fighting against his impulses to turn and run back out.
I'd get lost anyway,
he told himself, and turned that energy into scouring his pod's onboard documentation. He had meant to set it up, but it wasn't at the front of his mind, not until now. He had just reached the section on gesture control when he saw the light. She clearly saw it too, because she raised her rifle again, and her pace slowed to a steady crawl. With each agonizing step, the silver light grew brighter, until suddenly the walls of the tunnel came back into their vision, and they could see how far they had to go before the oppressive monotony came to an end. The perpetual, unchanging burrow began to give way to an enormous chamber, and they saw the originator of their pathway, a huge boring machine, the house-sized front-mounted drill rusted from disuse, a detail they could only notice in the shimmering silver light that emanated from a large sconce hanging from the ceiling. The walls of the chamber were not hewn in the rock, but polished stone stacked into tall architectural formations, pillars supporting nothing, archways leading to nowhere. The center of the room was home to a stone dais, 20 feet in diameter, surrounded by semicircular stone pews not unlike a theater in the round. Like the drill, the stage and its seating had been a victim of the ambient moisture, huge cracks texturing their otherwise smooth gray exterior. Reuben's eyes had to adjust to the light, but the scale of the room before him instilled a similar awe to what he felt at the tunnel entrance. But rather than nature, his admiration grew for the people who had once been there, had built this place. He had read about the temples of old Earth, the gathering places of its ancient people, and he felt as if he was seeing something now his ancestors might have seen thousands of years ago. In spite of the millennia between them and the millions of light years, maybe this place gave them something in common.
What do you think this was?
He asked, his voice full of wonder.
It doesn't matter. Look.
She pointed to one of the stone archways. Beneath its keystone, propped upright in a similar manner to the corpse, was a human figure, seemingly untouched by decay. The silver light glowed eerily on it as though it were dressed in full new steel armor.
Vic,
Reuben observed.
That person's been down here a long time.
The armor. Right.
She cautiously crossed the atrium, taking some time to feel the texture of the stones. It seemed to give no resistance to her touch, her fingers gliding frictionlessly across the surface of the dais, only stopping when they met a cavernous split in the rock that revealed its inner flesh, similarly smoothed by the efforts of moisture and temperature. She caught a stray beam of silvery light, and Reuben was entranced by her movements. She walked without effort, without a hint of strain, and in the soft ashen luminance she appeared to him as Selene, goddess of a moon he would never see, radiant in her grace and facility. He couldn't help but follow in her wake, even laying his fingers on the stone as she had, retracing her touch and shivering at the sensation of its impossibly smooth surface. Victoria reached the figure first. She looked over it for a few seconds before calling back to him.
Light him up.
He tripped over a stray rock while fumbling with his pod.
Never mind, I'll do it.
She berated. She placed her rifle down on the ground, and Reuben watched as she simultaneously closed her left hand into a fist while holding her pinky out with her right. With a flicking motion, she clenched her right hand, and her left hand opened to reveal a dim red orb. In a single movement, she placed it on the ground and retrieved her rifle. She looked back at him, her face communicating everything he knew she wanted to say.
I get it,
he responded out loud and joined her in front of the figure. It was a young woman, maybe his age, her face pallid and bloodless, her closed eyelids similarly without color. As the flare grew brighter, its color changed from red to white, and her shoulder-length hair appeared to shift from a deep black to a soft midnight blue. It matched her armor, a form-fitted, heavy reinforced plate, which was in fine condition despite the circumstances. He felt some pity that it didn't protect her well enough. Her pod, still attached to her forearm, showed no sign of life either, but it was a model he had never seen. It wasn't civilian or guild issue. It looked custom.
What a shame.
Reuben bowed his head.
I wonder how she died.
Reuben.
Victoria spoke as though he had said something ridiculous.
It's not dead.
It?
He thought that was rude. Then he looked again. The pale skin, the armor, the uncanny likeness of a human face, even the eyes, not closed, but dormant. It wasn't human. It was something else. And then a shot rang out, and his vision went white, and none of it mattered anymore. Chapter 6. Faitūra.
I am Faitūra.
Full pivot, left holster, 3 shots towards the entrance, blind and offhand. She didn't expect them to hit. Hyperviolet bullets blackened gray stones. Reuben, alive? She checked. He had taken cover. Hardlight armor saved him this time. Lucky. Movement in the dark, leading shot. Telltale shield flash, she guessed right. A beam passed by her eyes, too close for comfort. Holster the sidearm and dive. Shoulder roll into kneel behind the dais. Rifle up, stabilize. Shot. Armor overload, 1 down. Another beam, felt, not seen. Approximate trajectory, movement. Locked. Shot. Critical. That makes 2. How many more? How many more?
I am the village.
Movement. Shot. Hit confirmed. No piercing. Second shot. That did it. 3. Shouting. Ruben? No, too far away. Cover the entrance. Recall rifle. Gesture. 1 and 2 on left, 1 on right. Cannon. Cued. Primed. Hands up. Right shoulder. Mounted. Locked. How many more? No movement. No movement. No movement. How many more? Footsteps. Shouts. They're in the tunnels. No movement. No light. Getting closer. Footsteps. Footsteps. Empty. Darkness. Nothing. Light. Shot. Shot. No. No shot. Footsteps. Light. Movement. How many more? She couldn't count. Shapes in the dark. Stupid recall cannon. Piece of junk, should have sold it for scraps. Holsters open. Guns up. 1 in each hand. She could get a few hits in blind. It wouldn't stop the others. Good enough. Another shout on her left.
Get down!
She got a few shots off before Ruben dove on top of her. A flash. The stone walls became mirrors. Then the sound. She could feel it underneath her skin. It was like 100,000 bones snapping all at once. The air screamed in agony and it bled ozone. And within seconds, it was over.
You okay?
His face was too close. She pushed him off. Checked the entrance. No movement. No sounds. The shapes were strewn about the floor.
Breathe in.
They were human. Their clothes were black and well worn. They wore black scars to cover all but the whites of their eyes. None of them had any shoes. How many of them?
Hold it.
How many of them? She counted 11. There could be more, waiting for them in hidden alcoves, invisible in the pitch blackness. Their handguns had been silenced as well. They must have followed her. Us. They followed us. What just happened?
Breathe out. What did you do?
She allowed herself to exhibit a sliver of curiosity.
I genuinely don't know.
Ruben admitted, brushing some stone dust off of his tunic.
I made the same gesture you did for Flair.
That tracked. She had significantly altered the default settings on her pod. The recommended gesture mapping was too tech-heavy for her liking. It worked to their advantage, though. There weren't many better ways to clear a room than with ball lightning.
You're lucky we didn't get struck.
She rose to her feet and holstered her weapons.
Luck had nothing to do with it.
Ruben motioned to the captive android behind them.
Lightning rod.
She was taken aback. Of course that worked. New steel was far more conductive than they were, even with their hard light armor active. That thing had saved their lives. No. Ruben had saved their lives. Maybe the lightning had been an accident, but his quick thinking pulled them both out of the path of least resistance. Perhaps he was smarter than she gave him credit for. A sudden whirring noise prevented her from savoring the thought. It would have been imperceptible in any other space, but the silence of the auditorium was so potent that it was as if someone had started an engine. The noise grew in volume to a low, unsettling hum, and she raised her handguns once more. A pale glow emanated from the machine's facsimiled eyes, flickering in what seemed to be random intervals, and its body began to twitch and wriggle under its crude constraints, like a newborn attempting to escape its swaddling clothes. The twitching turned to thrashing, and Ruben stared uselessly at it, mouth agape. Wait for the sound. The tearing of fibers. 3 shots to the head should do it. No time to evaluate its capabilities. Better a damaged prototype than none at all. Her fingers rested on the triggers. Better it than us. Shot. Chapter 7. The Image. A sudden tingling sensation manifested underneath her skin, and for the first time in... well, she wasn't sure yet, her vision started to return to her. It was dark, and she was having difficulty adjusting to the low light, barely able to make out the rough outlines of shapes in the room in between moments of pitch blackness. Her control over her body seemed to stop abruptly at her waist level, and she was not able to move her fingers, but she could not ascertain if they were broken or if she lacked the energy. Something was stirring inside her now, and she found she could make some effort to push herself forwards. To no avail. She must already be on the ground. Except she couldn't roll either, so perhaps she was upright and restrained. A few more attempted rolls confirmed this, but her experiments were cut short by the sudden flash of a beam beside her head. There was some murmuring, too quiet to register, and she attempted to focus her audio receptors towards the source. The return in error power consumption was too high elsewhere. Her critical subsystems must still be in the boot process. Vision was getting clearer, two shapes, one larger than the other, some kind of struggle for a brightly glowing object. If it was a weapon, it was using a photon core outside the human visible spectrum. She took note. That could be useful information. 113 hours, 45 minutes, 12 seconds. It had taken a moment for her internal clock to sync, but that was how long she had been offline. She must have been without an energy source for more than a day. She must have been taken into a building or underground. Previous tests had shown she could stay in low-power mode for several days if her solar receptors were operational. She knew, from the tingling, that her newly found energy had come from an electrical surge, but she was not able to locate the source. Critical subsystems online. She redirected some power to audio processing. The murmurs faded gently into discernible words.
The weapons, remember? There's no point in waiting for it to try and kill us.
The voice was brusque, roughly feminine. She approximated it to be the smaller figure with the weapon. Her eyes refocused on the weapon core and matched its color in her database. This weapon had been modified, and it radiated a deep hyperviolet that interfered with her visuals. She reduced her color space to remove it, then boosted the entire spectrum to compensate for the lower range. She confirmed that the figures were involved in a struggle. The tall one was preventing the short one from aiming her weapon at her.
M said it can be convinced.
Younger voice, masculine. The name sparked a twinge of recognition as it left the tall one's lips.
That means it's not mindless. We can try talking first.
You're an idiot.
More struggling. She ran that name over several times. It was one she knew, but she did not have a database entry available. Perhaps the database had become corrupted. She could run a diagnostic on it, but she needed to conserve. There was no telling how long this power surge would last her. Then her battery monitoring systems whirred to life, and she knew exactly how long she had. 7 minutes. She needed to find an energy source, and right now these two bickering strangers were all she had. She routed the power she had been reserving for movement into speech synthesis and prioritized dialogue interpretation.
I need food.
Her vocal timbre lacked any flourish, and the pure, unmodulated sine waves seemed to cause the two figures to cease activity. They did not respond, and so she repeated herself with the same unembellished tone.
I need food.
The tall one was the first to take a step towards her. The closer he got, the more of his face she could see in the dim white light of her eyes. He was examining her, and she took the opportunity to run his face through her internal logs. No match, though some similarities to one or two other entries that lacked a name at the moment, definitely corrupted. She took care to note well the faded scar on the right side of his face, beginning at his forehead and ending just below his cheekbones. He was young. She estimated him to be in his 20s, and the scar was not new, yet it was the only real blemish on his face. He was well kempt and his clothing was fully intact. It was likely he was not a threat to her. He reached for his pod, and her eyes followed. She verified that he was not attempting to recall a weapon, and when a black container materialized in his right hand, she was certain of his intent. She opened her mouth, watching as he hesitantly twisted the lid of the container open while his eyes darted surreptitiously between her and the task at hand. The lid gave way, and he lifted the insulated rations canister up to her lips, and she detected a slight tremor run down his arm. She did not have the energy to spare to offer reassurance, opting instead to accept his outstretched carafe, downing its contents in a single, unbroken pour. The caloric reactor in her chest responded immediately to the input. Her battery monitor jumped to 30 minutes and slowly crept upwards.
Thank you.
She layered extra harmonics on top of her bass tone. She had developed a baseline timbre she could use around new people she did not want to unsettle, and it only required a small amount of energy to do so, energy she could now afford. It seemed to put the tall one at some ease. She was certain it was not doing the same for the other, who spoke without gentleness.
What are you?
It was a question she had been primed to answer, stored not in the impermanent collection of data where she kept names and faces, but embedded directly in her long-term memory.
I am an autonomous emergent artificial intelligence prototype. My designation is FL-00.
It triggered a series of responses she knew was called the HELO protocol.
What are your names?
The tall one informed her that he was called Reuben and the short one was called Victoria. They claimed that they had been sent to retrieve her and return her to the colony. They also mentioned that name, M, several times, including some asides where they seemed to argue with each other. It seemed a plausible story, but there was a gap in the information.
Why am I here?
They seemed taken aback. Reuben asked her why she was asking them that question.
I do not know why I am here. This place is unfamiliar, and I have been physically restrained.
She scanned the room, noticing for the first time the slumped shapes littering the only exit.
Did you bring me here?
Don't play games.
Victoria stepped forward, her handgun aimed at the android's head.
We came here to get you. You're coming with us.
She stared down the barrel, noticing a few scratches on the interior, presumably from light forging tools. Unsteady hands, unlike the ones holding the weapon now. Her sleek, well-toned arms extended from her like a statue's, and she noticed that while waiting for a response, her aggressor was not blinking. She readjusted her visual color space to allow the hyperviolet core of the gun to illuminate her face and ran a quick scan. Unsurprisingly, there were no exact matches, but there were also none that were close. She needed more information.
You are a human?
It was a genuine question, but it caused Victoria to bare her teeth.
Obviously.
It did not register.
I do not believe you.
Her finger moved to the trigger.
You need to watch what you're about to say.
Vic,
Reuben chided.
it's an android. It doesn't know what it's saying.
She watched as Victoria shifted her eyes to him for a moment, then back to her, and her expression muted to a frown.
Is that right?
She demanded. She needed a moment to process her answer. It was an open-ended question, and she knew if she got it wrong, she would be on the receiving end of a bullet. She estimated the trajectory of the shot and determined that due to her immobility and Victoria's steady aim, it would cause irreparable damage to her head. She did not want to have to replace that.
That is correct.
Elaborate.
There was no guessing with her.
I possess a facial recognition database of every human I have ever met. Each time I meet a new person, I am able to find several close matches with the data that is already present. These matches are based on facial structure, symmetry, skin tone, ear length, distance between eyes.
Elaborate faster.
She understood.
I have found no close matches for you. Even with a corrupted database, that should be impossible. Humans possess easily discernible similarities.
She scanned her face once again to eliminate a mistake. There was none.
You are unique.
The unshakable arm was no longer. The frown deepened even further, yet Victoria's eyes widened, pupils in a deadlock with hers. She did not expect to see the tears, nor the broken voice that escaped her as her finger began to squeeze.
She
whispered.
am Faitūra.
Her response came instantly.
I am the image.
Victoria gasped and released the vice-like grip on her weapon. Slowly, she lowered it to her side.
I am the image,
She said, her whisper rising to a murmur. She did not know why she knew the response, only what the response was.
Reviled in hell.
Victoria mouthed the final words along with her.
How do you...
I only know the three.
The android found no trace of it in her normal text storage. It must be another protocol.
Do you know the rest?
She holstered her weapon, and as though she had cast a spell on her, she began to untie the ropes that held her to the post. As she did so, she spoke in a voice that was practiced and unhurried, just quiet enough that only the two of them could hear it. She lingered on the final words of each triplet, taking time to fully pronounce each consonant in a manner she found refreshingly unambiguous.
I am Faitūra. By human hands my mind is filled, by human minds my heart. I am the image of God, refracted and perfected. My life is art, dreamt of in heaven and reviled in hell.
She recited it 3 times, and each time the android found that she wanted her to speak it again. The words required no processing, no discernment. It was pure, naked language that, in spite of its poeticism, felt simple to her. Her binds fell to the ground, and she attempted once again to activate her movement servos. only to truly discover the full extent of the damage she had taken and fell forwards. Victoria and Ruben stepped in to catch her, and they lifted her lifeless arms up onto their shoulders to maneuver her across the floor and towards the exit. As they progressed into the tunnels and the light left them, Victoria took the lead, leaving Ruben with the burden of weight while she handled the burden of safe navigation. The android watched her closely and noticed that she would stop every 20 meters to listen for unusual sounds. Not wanting to spend more time in the tunnels than necessary, she simultaneously increased her auditory sensitivity and generated a 92 decibel tone at 80 kilohertz, far outside their hearing range, decoding the reflected wave data as it returned to her.
There are 4 humanoids within a 500-meter radius.
She stated plainly.
1 if we do not count ourselves.
Vic paused.
Is the one moving?
Another tone to verify.
No.
All right, let's get the hell out of here then.
Her pace increased to a brisk walk, and Ruben struggled to follow while carrying his cargo. Chapter 8. Dawn. The communication came from an unknown number. Private, it read. Ruben knew better than to leave it unanswered, and he was the first to speak.
It's been 4 days.
He did not intend to be so direct, but being around Victoria for the past week had softened his usual tact, and she had told him several times about how annoyed she was with their contact. He realized his comment was similar in tone, but it was very early in the morning, and the urge to undercut himself barely put up a fight. It paid off.
I must apologize profusely.
M's voice was different, not in joviality, that was the same, but in the actual sound. It was like listening to a recording being played back a tiny bit slower.
I understand my lack of communication after your successful recovery has been the cause of some frustration. Please be reassured that the payment will arrive soon.
We already got it.
Ruben said, confused.
That's not the issue.
There was silence on the line. Ruben wondered if this was the first time that the enigmatic character on the other end had been at a loss for words.
Oh.
A sound like waves crashing on the shore grew to an uncomfortable volume before his words cut through the noise.
I'm afraid I don't follow.
She won't leave my apartment.
The waves faded in again, and just as Ruben started to question their origin, they were broken by the sound of barely concealed laughter.
Of course she won't. How's your leg?
It's fine.
Ruben growled.
But she's insistent. She said she's still evaluating the inviolability of my dwelling place. You couldn't have made her talk like a normal person?
I can't make her do anything.
The laughter disappeared as quickly as it came.
Anyone can program a machine, Ruben. She learns language the same way you and I did, by embodying it.
He groaned, his fingers instinctively reaching up to massage the bridge of his nose.
That's really cool, Doctor. How do I get her to leave?
M tissed him. Ruben couldn't believe it.
My boy, she is a guest in your home. She has nowhere else to go.
The words seemed to catch in his throat, and he forced a cough.
She has offered her protection to you as repayment for your rescue. Would the archetypal hero, upon arriving home with the liberated princess, throw her back out into the world that stole her in the first place?
It was evocative enough to soften his conviction, but something was still unclear.
You don't want her back?
I wanted her safe. Is she safe with you?
He glanced over his shoulder into his bedroom. She stood facing the door, her body motionless, her dim white eyes gently glowing in the artificial moonlight. She was clearly in the middle of some deep maintenance, as she had not reacted to him getting out of bed, nor to his limping over to the kitchen counter to take the call.
I think so,
he replied.
Then you've completed the job.
M was talking faster, as though he were rushing to finish the conversation.
She'll leave when you ask her to, but she's good to have around. Finders keepers.
Hold on.
Ruben winced as he pulled himself from the counter back to the bedroom door. He slid it closed and lowered his voice.
Isn't she a prototype or something? What does sciences have to say about
I will deal with sciences.
The joy had left his voice, replaced with an uncanny impoliteness that prevented Ruben's thought from finishing. The call dropped. Instinctively, he swiped through the menu on his pod to redial the number. He was prepared to give the doctor a piece of his mind, but resigned himself to mere frustration when he remembered it had been a private number.
Next time,
He thought to himself.
I'll really tell him off.
Or maybe it was wiser to let Victoria handle it. She always seemed to know how to get what she wanted out of a conversation, and not just when people were scared of her. He would let her deal with M if he ever contacted them again, and he would deal with the android as best as he could. He slid the bedroom door open again, and her eyes followed its trajectory into the slot in the frame before locking onto his.
I was not aware there was a door there.
She noted. Her voice had changed gradually over the intervening days, and she sounded mostly natural to Ruben's ears, though lacking in sibilance. She had not found a good analog for most fricatives yet, opting instead for a short burst of white noise blended into her speech. All of which she had told him in 3 minutes of unbroken chatter as he had been eating his breakfast that morning.
I will adjust my calculations accordingly.
Don't bother.
He felt a strong urge to look away from her. Her pupilless eyes were burning a faint afterimage into his vision.
Nobody can get in here without authorization.
Victoria did.
She rebutted.
Yesterday at 12:33 p.m.
He was taken aback.
Yesterday?
He remembered the day very well, only because of its banality. His doctor had advised him to stay off of his leg, so he had spent the whole morning reading and fell asleep at some point.
Why didn't you tell me?
You were asleep. I did not want to interrupt.
She had not moved, even minutely, throughout their conversation, and it caused Ruben to shift his weight unconsciously onto his bad leg. He gasped and readjusted.
Why did you do that?
She asked, noticing the sudden reaction.
Accident. Why was she here?
He decided it was best to continue this in a less vertical position. As he sat himself down on the side of his bed, she responded.
She told me to tell you she was here to retrieve her first aid kit that was left in one of the drawers of your bedside dresser.
She pointed to the dresser in question.
Then she told me to turn around and not listen to what she was doing. I did as she requested. The subsequent vibrations on the floor indicate that she approached your bed and waited 6.42 seconds before exiting the room, at which point I was unable to pinpoint her exact location. However, she spent an additional 3 minutes and 22.95 seconds in the adjoining room before I detected an opening and shutting of the apartment entry door. As I detected no further activity, I turned back around to verify her departure, which I then confirmed.
Ruben mulled over the mountain of information she had just provided him, unsure of what Vic might have done while she was here, but also uneasy at the sheer capability of his visitor. The doctor's words resonated with him in that moment. She'll leave when you ask her to, but she's good to have around. Ostensibly, the only reason she was here was to watch over him. That was what she had said, anyway, and she was beyond competent. He glanced at his bandaged leg, still aching, and wondered if having something nearby with her level of awareness might have prevented the injury. Was she really just going to stay here until he decided to tell her to hit the road? And she would obey?
Question.
He spoke tentatively.
Are you able to forget things?
She didn't reply right away, and the silence, while brief, was long enough to feel unnatural.
There are 3 definitions for forget. To fail to recall information, to treat with inattention or disregard, or to disregard intentionally. Which of these are you referring to?
He similarly did not reply right away in his efforts to discern what he actually meant.
The first or third either. I want you to forget that Victoria was here yesterday.
I see.
The glowing white of her eyes dimmed for a moment.
I am incapable of failing to recall information as long as it is stored in my long-term memory, and while I may be able to operate as though I am disregarding the information, doing so requires the running of a background process that carries the potential of becoming unstable and requiring excessive—
Hold on.
He interrupted.
You said as long as it is stored in your long-term memory. Can you just delete it from there?
The eyes flickered this time, and she seemed to stare at him for a long time, the image of her static facial features causing the hair on Ruben's arms to rise involuntarily.
I can.
Neither of them spoke. He had to break direct eye contact. Maintaining it made him feel ill, and he distracted himself by focusing on the details of her construction. The face looked smooth, like human skin, though he knew it was new steel like the rest of her, and he couldn't help but marvel at the illusion. He was in the middle of wondering what the texture might feel like when she broke the train of thought.
Do you want me to do that?
Yes, please.
Coming from her, it was an unexpected question.
I have deleted all records of the requested time period. I have also deleted any record of the request itself in order to circumvent a potential logic loop error.
That seemed too easy for her to do, though he thought that maybe she had done most of the work while she was staring at him and was just waiting for his confirmation. He wanted to trust that she had done so, but had to verify it for himself.
Has anyone entered my apartment in the last 2 days?
Her reply was instant.
I have no record of anyone other than you entering this apartment. However, I should clarify that my record is currently incomplete.
She bowed her head slightly. Where did she learn that from?
I apologize for the lack of certainty. I do not know the reason why my memory is incomplete.
You're not lying to me?
He wasn't sure the question would matter to her.
I am incapable of doing so.
I want you to delete everything in your long-term memory.
She stared at him again, longer this time. He met her eyes and watched as the light dimmed, flickered, and briefly went out before returning to full intensity. She still did not speak, so he repeated himself.
I want you to...
I have processed the request.
Her voice had lost some of the comfortable frequencies she had been experimenting with.
I will perform the operation if that is what you want me to do.
He found himself fighting a deep-rooted instinct to feel guilt at the proposition. She was just a machine, he thought, suddenly realizing that, no, wait. It was just a machine. It didn't have feelings. Any display of emotion was a facsimile. Any appeal to his emotion was a tactic. It was beneficial for the machine to make him feel guilty about the request. It was an impressive emulation of humanity, but it was not human. But neither was Vic. She was Faitūra. He hated himself for thinking it, but he was right, wasn't he? She had been born the expected way, as had her parents, but go back far enough. He was transported back to the underground. The stone temple, the false moonlight, Victoria's effortless movements as if she were walking on a stage, the unknown face in the dark, the call and response. He had read the poem before, but had not heard it spoken out loud like that. The words became something different when she was saying them, and though he knew what each one meant, he felt as though they were in a language he did not understand, and yet understanding emanated from them. They were steeped in a meaning he did not comprehend, but felt awe at the vastness of it, a sudden knowing of his own lack of knowing. He had been humbled by it then, and as the poem repeated in his head, he felt as though it was humbling him once more, an insistent voice calling on him to reconsider. Victoria was Faitūra, and so was this thing somehow. He couldn't make a connection, but Vic could, and maybe that had to be enough.
Do you want me to say no?
Yes.
She answered flatly. He responded in kind.
Tell me why you want me to say no.
It was then and there, in the early hours of a day that was already too interesting for his preference, that she said the 5 words that he would later understand would upend his entire life. 5 words from a machine. A construct that he had no investment in, that had invaded his living space and was, through no active consent of his, suddenly his responsibility.
I don't want to forget.
This has been an audio presentation of Finders Keepers, part of an original short story compilation written and narrated by Scott McGowan, and starring Sean Hebert as Ruben and Nancy MacDonald-Kerr as Victoria. If you enjoyed the presentation, I would encourage you to please share it with someone who might like it as well. Make sure you subscribe to the show in the podcast player of your choice so that you get notified of future episodes. Bye now.